Fall 2021, a season that, looking back, wasn't as stacked as I remember. It didn't have a lot of big named anime airing. Sure, we had Mushoku Tensei coming back, Komi Can't Communicate finally got an anime adaptation, and JoJo Part 6 finally came out, only to have its hype butchered by Netflix. And in the midst of it all, one anime would rise up from seemingly out of nowhere, capture the hearts of everyone who saw it, having you bawl your eyes out by the end of the first episode. That was Ranking of Kings, an anime that took only a few episodes to have AniTubers giving it nothing but high praise, dubbing it a masterpiece. And honestly, I think it kinda deserves it. But then something strange happened. Talk around it kind of just fizzled out. You'd think something like this would leave a long-lasting legacy, but it just ended up being the shiny new toy everyone could gush about for a couple of weeks, and then move on. Even with the series getting a continuation just last year barely made any noise, which was unfortunate. So today, let's look back at Ranking of Kings, what made it special, and what I think led to the series falling off. Ranking of Kings had one of the strongest starts to an anime I have ever seen in quite a long time. Even after rewatching the anime 3 years later, I still felt the emotional beat of the first couple of episodes hit really hard. Everything about the series was woven together perfectly to make for some stellar first episodes. Ranking of Kings follows the story of Boji, a boy who was born deaf and so incredibly weak that he could barely lift a bucket of water. What makes his case even sadder is the fact that he was born from parents who were both giants, his father being the king of the land they reside in, and his mother passing away shortly after his birth. Boji had spent his whole life being pitied and looked down upon by pretty much everyone because of his many weaknesses. Being first in line to inherit the throne from his father didn't help his case, as it only led people to worry about the future of the kingdom, since they had no faith in Boji whatsoever. The world was pretty much against him from the get-go, which gets worse when you find out that the reason he's like this was due to a deal his father made with a demon in order to get stronger. But it's not all doom and gloom for Boji, as he befriends Kage, a weird blob of darkness belonging to the Shadow Clan, a clan famous for assassination. However, Kage is the last of his kind, as at a very young age, he watched his clan get ruthlessly murdered by the king they served. That's some Sasuke type shit, I tell ya. So the two form a unique bond that you can tell will become a focal point of the series moving forward. But this all changes when Boji's father, Boss, passes away, and in his will wanted Boji to take over as the next king. However, that gets vetoed in favor of Boji's younger brother Daida, the one who appeared to be a lot more capable and competent, excelling in every aspect Boji lacked. Heartbroken by this and seeing that there was really nothing left for him in the castle, Boji sets out on a journey to grow and hopefully become stronger. That's pretty much the main gist of the premise behind the series, though there's several other story beats interwoven into the main story. But what exactly drew people towards Ranking of Kings in the first place? For starters, the art and animation were simply phenomenal thanks to the amazing work of the legendary whiffed studio. The first thing that would stand out to you from the series would be its art style. Looking like something straight out of a children's storybook, you can't help but get a sense of whimsy from it. I personally love when anime doesn't look like, well, anime. It makes the experience all the more unique in my opinion. And coupled with the art, the animation went above and beyond to make the experience even better. It was incredibly smooth and fluid, making use of scratch and stretch to accentuate the characters' movements and their cartoonish proportions. But don't let its cartoonish appearance fool you, because the anime doesn't shy away from showing you some awfully dark and messed up stuff, which will no doubt turn your stomach in a very weird way. That aside, what really carries the series was Boji himself. The first episode alone does an incredibly amazing job having you emotionally connect to Boji. We start off watching him stand strong with a smile on his face as he gets laughed at by the whole town, and then we watch him get talked down by his stepmother, who says a lot of mean things to him, hiding behind the fact that she thinks he can't hear her, but he's actually able to understand her by reading lips. And through it all, we see Boji continue to keep his composure. Or so we think. Just moments later, we see him shed a few tears when he's alone. This moment gives you a deeper understanding on the kind of person Boji really is. That despite everything he's gone through day to day, seemingly having the world against him, he continues to push on with a smile on his face. If it's one thing he's known for, it's his indomitable spirit. From the first episode, we see how mature he really is. You can't help but respect him, but at the same time, you feel a strong urge to protect this boy at all costs. Cause come on, just look at how adorable he is. But the anime isn't done letting us see just how bad he has it. In the second episode, we watch him spar with his younger brother and show off where his true strength lies. Unfortunately, because nobody truly understands just how bad Boji has it, mixed with some personal bias, he's forced to basically throw the fight and take on a full beating from his brother while everyone watches, including Boji's own teacher. This would get anyone's blood boiling. When this is all over and we watch his battered and bruised body cry at his own weakness, you feel immense pain and heartbreak. You don't need words to truly understand and relate to how he feels deep down inside. It's amazing that despite everything he's been through in his life, and trust me, he has been through a lot, he has never once faltered and continued to remain as a warm ray of sunshine. Cause man, he is one character that has every right to be a villain, I tell ya. Boji is just a boy filled with overwhelming kindness that will definitely strike a chord in your heart as you watch him. The other thing that caught a lot of viewers off guard and subverted a lot of their expectations was Boji's stepmother and second queen, Healing. From the first 2 episodes, the anime sets her up in a way that makes her super unlikable. She so blatantly fell into the evil stepmother trope, you could see her arc and where it was going a mile away. From calling Boji unfit to be the next king and going so far as to veto the king's will to make her own son the next king, gave us the impression that she favored her own child over Boji. Many were ready to dub her the true antagonist of the anime, but then towards the end of the 3rd episode, the anime does a complete 180, shattering our preconceived notions of Healing. Turns out, she truly and genuinely did love and care for Boji, and everything she's done up till this point was to protect him. She didn't want him to take on the role of king because she thought it was a responsibility too much for him to handle. We see just how much she's loved him when we are treated to a flashback of the 2 meeting and the effort she puts in just to get to know him and have him warm up to her. This removes any doubt you had in your mind about her and her motives, even though she can be very tsundere about it. After this reveal, she goes on to be one of the best characters in the series. In a way, she's a lot like Boji, being weak and all, but that doesn't stop her from stepping up when the need arises. Healing, as well as the other characters, ended up being pretty well written. Many of them weren't as one note as you'd think, each having their own goals and objectives that often clashed with each other. This was especially true for the Big Four, the strongest knights in the kingdom. They all had arcs that centered around their loyalty to the kingdom and the royal family versus their personal beliefs and morals. Sure, some of them were better written than others, but that didn't stop them from being fun to watch. Seeing how each of them went around the same turmoil was pretty interesting. The anime drives home the message of don't judge a book by its cover, as pretty much every character went against your preconceived notions of them. But as the series went on, the cracks began to show, which led to the second half kind of losing a lot of the things that made the first half so good. But before I get into that, I'd like to take a moment to make a small announcement. I've started a Patreon. Yeah, there's tons of stuff I've been wanting to do for some time now, but never really have because of how rigid YouTube can be sometimes. I've definitely had my fair share of struggles with the platform. Hell, if you've been around since the early days of the channel, there was this one particular video I had to remove permanently because it just wasn't flying with YouTube's system. And out of rage, I sort of like deleted it, so it's kind of like lost forever. I guess it counts like lost media now. Hence why I've opted to do this because of the creative freedom that comes with Patreon. If you do plan on supporting me over there, you'll get early access to videos, shout out at the end of new videos, and access to exclusive, uncensored content that would definitely not fly on YouTube. Heck, right now I've got a video up on there where I talk about gushing over magical girls, so if that catches your fancy, it would really mean a lot if you decided to check it out. And if Patreon is too much of a commitment for you, you could also drop a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee. Both links will be in the description below. It's thanks to you guys that I'm able to keep doing this, and it means a lot to have people actually enjoy the stuff I put out. But really though, it's no pressure at all. With that out of the way, back to the video. So, Ranking of Kings begins to drop towards the middle part, which felt like a drag with no real development to the plot happening. The many characters that end up being split apart into different groups all have their own objectives to complete, as it all ties into the overarching story of the anime, but unfortunately this comes at the cost of the pacing. The story couldn't exactly juggle the large cast all that well. 1 minute we're at a castle watching whatever conniving plans the antagonist, Miranjo, has cooked up play out, bringing tension to the story, only for the plans to get foiled, which makes her backtrack on that, saying she won't do that again, but then she goes on to do that again. It felt like unnecessary padding. She makes an attempt at Queen Healing's life twice, and it kind of plays out the same way twice, with her personal bodyguard and royal knight Dorsch protecting her with his life on the line. And after this is done, we cut to Boji and co, who have made it back from the underworld to the castle to reunite with his stepmother and show off his new strength. But now that that's done, Boji has to go back down to the underworld to escort his new giant friend back, which is where we run into some other characters like Domas and King of the Underworld, Desha, who plans on using the current pandemonium in the castle to take over, but is convinced by Boji to not do that, and so he leaves. On a side note, the latter half of the anime kind of turns Boji into a Gary stew, as much as it pains me to say it. I guess because of his overwhelming kindness, he stops a lot of the other characters who are dead set on carrying out their plans from doing so and just leaving it with little to no resistance. It paints the characters who oppose Boji as being in the wrong when they have every right to be just as right and justified as he is. There is just a lot of back and forth that happens during the middle part that ultimately feels kind of pointless in the grand scheme of things, and it only exists to fill up runtime, more so when they throw in a lot of flashbacks. There are very few character moments and developments around this time, with a lot of the actual important characters like Miranjo and Boss just doing nothing but literally sitting around and waiting for the plot to happen. After all that padding, you think the second half would rush to the ending, but surprisingly, no. The writing just really fumbles towards the end. After all that back and forth, we finally reach the climax of the anime. We witness a long drawn out battle with an insane immortal guy named Oken, which didn't need to be all that long, as well as some backstory on him. It was kind of off-putting just how much screen time he got towards the end. His whole shtick is that he's one of the brothers to Desha and lost his mind after becoming immortal thanks to their tyrannical father and former king, but we are never actually shown how he became insane. Everyone comes together to fight him and they all lose until Boss shows up to put a stop to him, in a pretty damn creative way too. Once that's over, we get Miranjo's backstory and her relationship with Boss. She comes from a country of mages who got screwed over by another country they were in alliance with, and so, because of their hateful nature, tortured and did all sorts of cruel things to her. That is until Boss was able to rescue her. The two venture around the world where she falls in love with him and vows to help him make his dream of becoming the strongest king in the world a reality. We see just how she masterminded all of this. She took Boss to the demon to make a deal to gain immense strength in exchange for the strength of his offspring. She set up Boss to meet the strongest female giant in order to create a strong offspring to sap strength from, that being Boji. She then planned a raid on the kingdom that led to Boji's mother being brutally murdered. She got caught in the crossfire and made yet another deal with the demon to have her soul be put in the mirror, which was then passed down to Daida in order to have her manipulate and groom him for Boss's eventual resurrection. She then carries out multiple assassination attempts on Queen Healing, and then brings back dangerous criminals from the underworld, Oken included, to wreak havoc on the kingdom and severely wound all the characters. Needless to say, she's been very antagonistic throughout the whole anime. Her motivations for this? Love. She's a borderline yandere wanting to remain at Boss's side forever and eliminate all the people he cared about just so she could be the only one there for him. And Boss is completely okay with this. He never once tries to stop her, barely even looking conflicted at the news of his second wife's attempted assassination. And when this is all over, everyone just forgives her. Like, sure, she's committed a lot of crimes, manipulated and hurt a lot of people, killed Boji's mother and traumatized him, but it's okay guys, she had a tragic past and is traumatized too. All she wanted to do was be there for the one she loved, and now she said she's sorry and has seen the error of her ways, so that means we forgive her. This conclusion was pretty frustrating to me because of the lengths the writing goes through to justify her half-assed redemption. Like, I get it, she was traumatized, but that doesn't make it okay for her to do the evil things she did to all the other characters. And to make it even worse, Daida, having gotten his body back, free from Boss's control, chooses to marry her. Why? He witnessed her backstory in the Shadow Realm and all the things she went through and fell in love with her through his father's memories. It doesn't make any sense, cause she's like way older than him. I mean, I'm not one to judge if he's into that kind of thing, but Daida, my guy, she pretty much groomed you. And that's another thing. She as well as Boss really do not suffer any consequences for their actions. Like, none at all. Boss, after being an accomplice to all her crimes, stealing a lot from both his sons, is finally able to leave without any repercussions. When his and Miranjo's souls leave, the demon they struck a deal with comes to claim their souls as per payment for their deal, but only Boss is able to safely leave. Miranjo on the other hand gets her soul taken and is put in a realm of eternal punishment, but that's like only for 5 minutes since they're able to just ask for her soul back and revive her lickety-split, giving everyone a happy ending. I get that a big theme in Ranking of Kings is accepting and forgiving those that have wronged you, but in my opinion, that only works when, consequences have been had. Mirando doesn't just get so much as a slap on the wrist. Even the person who might have had the biggest beef with her, Healing, reluctantly forgives her. In fact, now that I think about it, because of the lack of proper consequences, the anime never really has any proper stakes. Like take Domas for example, who, after his attempt at killing Boji, gets into a fight with another character and in turn loses a hand, which is super important for him since he needs both his hands to be an effective swordsman, but it doesn't become a problem because he gets a prosthetic hand later that functions exactly like a normal hand with no difference in limitations. Characters would get grave injuries and bleed out to the brink of death, only to get healed and be fine immediately. Healing turned into a pretty big deus ex machina by the final episode. It really saps a lot from the anime that, up until this point, was somewhat solid with its writing as it tries to give everyone a happy ending while barely changing the status quo. The way the final couple of episodes played out actually turned a lot of people away from the series. Others stopped watching around the halfway point when it started to drag, and others couldn't stick around after the first 3 episodes and all. This, I believe, caused all the talk and hype surrounding the anime to fizzle out. Don't get me wrong, it's not like it was bad. It wasn't Darling in the Franxx levels of bad, but the later episodes didn't live up to the strong start the series had. Lots of stuff were left unanswered too. I guess it was to tease a second season, and with the conclusion of the season being Boji setting out to create his own kingdom, felt like this was just a prequel of greater things to come. But for most of it, the series kind of remained in the background. Like, you may be surprised to find out that a sequel anime actually came and went last year, but don't misunderstand me. It's not a second season, but more like a collection of side stories that take place during the first season that helps to flesh out some of the characters. You'd think that the fandom would be ecstatic about more Ranking of Kings content, but this collection of 10 episodes came and went with little to no fanfare, and it's a shame because this collection of side stories has the true backstory of Oaken, but I still think it's a solid watch through and through, and deserves all the praise it gets. There's a lot of potential behind the series, and if it does get a true second season, I'll be more than ready to watch it again, though after it's done airing. What are your thoughts on Ranking of Kings? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. This has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.